welcome to Purple Quarter's videocast series. I know we did have a bit of break in between because of the second wave that's hit us. We'd like to welcome Raghav Chandra on this specific videocast. Welcome, Raghav, to our show.
Hey, Roopa, it's great to be here. Good to see you after a while.
Absolutely. So I think, Raghav, it's been some time now. I think it's about 2 years since we last met, if I remember that correctly. And if you go back to the time that we had really met in your office, we did speak about a lot about how things have evolved for India. So just going with that very first question that I have in my mind and I'd like to talk to you about is, you moved, you did your education abroad, then you had your first round of your job with Twitter as a software engineer, if I remember correctly. Then you did one stint of founder already for a company called Buggy, and then you moved on to Urban Company, right? So the whole works. I think this was even the first question that I did ask you even when we met 2 years ago. Yeah. Could you tell us how the entire journey has been and how did you actually trip into Urban Company? If you can give us a bit of that, even from a tech perspective, that'll be lovely.
Yeah. So I think I had a fantastic engineering life in my younger years. I'd spent a good 6 years in the Valley, was at Berkeley. I think the ecosystem was brewing with all these, now established names, but to be honest, these were all very young names. I was at Yelp when they were like a tiny shop. I used to sit next to, the CEO, and there was a favorite pet called Darwin there. Twitter, when I joined, was in a very, very young stage. So I saw a lot of tech kind of pan out. But I think at some part of it, I think there's some interesting things, right? The experiences there as a younger engineer taught me what it takes inside a high growth company, the massive tech build outs which happen. The classic questions got introduced to me very soon, technical debt and platform building and consolidation and stocks, of stacks and whatnot. And there's an unfortunate casualty of this also. My excitement for building large scale systems kind of died out because you kind of see a massive scale out in some of these companies, and then you're not interested in that anymore. But I think somewhere in my heart, what happened was I was missing a certain amount of value creation. Right, there was a part of me which wanted to go out and create value in a much more meaningful way. It was okay to create value for a smaller audience set, as long as the value which I create for a certain user, right, is genuine. It's helping them have a better living, right? And I think that clarion call made me question, why am I in the US? Why don't I move back to India? It's something where I associate and relate to the struggles. And it actually, for me, the decision was made very quickly because it was there in my back of my mind forever. But it took me 6 months to convince the important stakeholders in my life, which is basically my parents. And I moved back, and I think when I look back, it seems to be a lot more stupider than when I did it, because I was very young. I moved back when I was 23 with full passion. The Desh is going to India is going to be revolutionized because I'm going to come back. So that's when I started my first company in the similar theme of empowerment. So it was ride sharing and almost the equivalent of an Uber for auto rickshaws. And this is all pre-Uber days. This is when Ola was also very young. Honestly, I call that as my practical MBA experience. It taught me how to think about business, how to value the whole chain of customer to supply chain. Right, it made me a lot more problem first than solution first. But that's the same time when my other two co-founders, Abhiraj, Varun, were going through their own journey. They were struggling with the whole debate of should I quit BCG or not, because they were also stuck in the same situation. There was a golden handcuff to stick in larger corporates. So they also kind of were going through their first startup. And I think somewhere it just luck would have it. All three of us struggled with our first company. And so, Abhiraj was trying to convince me that my idea is stupid and I should join him. And I was trying to do the same thing. We just continued our path. But at some point, our first startups failed. And when we got together, we realized there's a bigger call, right? What we were actually trying to do, we're trying to fit small solutions. But, why we started our entrepreneur journey was to create something meaningful, which actually lasts beyond our own lifetime, something which goes beyond an institution. And and some values kind of align really well, right? Creating mass impact. The impact in a certain person's life should be meaningful, right? It should be able to be an institution where we're able to stay 20, 30, 50 years together, not a 1 year, 2 year journey. And that's what kind of brought together and created Urban Company or the Urban Club. We did kind of rationalize the space. We were very clear on services as a big industry. We related to it. We could see the pain point of why it's so tough to call a plumber or a carpenter or getting your appliances fixed. I think the problem was real. That was our starting point. What we didn't realize was how big the problem could get. We had a somewhat of an idea of it's a real problem, it's an everyday problem. But I think the journey since then has shaped a lot of what the problem was and how deep do we need to go and so on and so forth.
Sure. So Raghav, I think with Urban Company itself, you guys have seen two stages, right? One, because it started at a time and an era when there was no competition for you guys who were doing exactly a similar concept. So I'm sure the challenges that you saw during that time was completely different versus now when there has been scale, there's more challenges from a scale perspective, right? There are two bits to the story. So how did this, become a technology play? How did you actually wrap this around technology, which is what you're good at? So can we hear that side from you?
So let me actually define my version of what is a tech company. And it's a very classic debate.
Right.
And people struggle here because most people imagine tech to be, something which the company sells. So if I'm selling data, it makes me a tech company. If I'm building the next high-scale database, I'm a tech company. True. Their domain is selling to some degree tech. But I think the better definition in today's world is tech is actually not a product. Tech is a process. So in theory, I do believe that any domain, any industry, no matter how archaic it must or it could sound, could easily be a tech company if the process of doing things is tech. Because essentially what tech will give you is it will give you speed to scale, which is an obvious thing. But what is not as obvious is it also gives you speed to innovate. Because as you start to codify processes, right, as a company, how do you grow is you'll figure out a certain PMF, and hence you've basically cracked a certain code. Now you want to codify it as a company before you can go further. The best way to codify as well, code which engine is right. Right. So it actually does fuel innovation quite a lot. So having said that, I think a journey has been such where we started off as a horizontal layer, as a thin horizontal layer. Why? Because, as a tech company, you can't really go deep. You can't control the supply chain. You can aggregate. What we didn't realize that just being an aggregator is not going to cut it. The quality, the supply chain, the structuring of the industry is so broken, right, that you can't really aggregate a broken product. That is when we kind of started going deeper, right? We questioned, why do we need aggregators? Why can't we directly go to an individual? And it was a drastic move, right? The supply, like beauticians, plumbers, actually never have worked alone. They've always been a part of a small mom and pop shop, right? So having them to move from their salaried jobs onto a gig economy model was tough initially. But we were able to create massive earning jumps for them, right? Then we realized, well, how do we increase quality? And that's when our process changed into going much deeper. So we invested in training, we invested in logistics, we invested in even the products which get bought, like cosmetics, spare parts. We realized we have to standardize it, right? So we built our own product e-commerce inside us to support that. And whatever, all of these basically essentially run on tech, right? Because it's impossible to scale, it's impossible to innovate. So we imagine a worldview where we are going to continuously pursue innovation, where there's a worldview where humans are not needed, right? And that fundamental DNA is what pushes us to innovate, to codify processes, to stretch a little more.
Sure.
Interestingly, actually, our domain, Roopa, is not at all standardized. Services as an industry is not standardized. So it is very inbuilt into us as a DNA that we'll only create value and build a bigger company as we kind of go out there and start to figure out and structure this industry. And that inherently makes us very, very, it's not just limited to tech, right? The whole company's DNA, even supply teams, business teams, marketing teams, fundamentally are very first principles driven, which for me is the heart of a tech DNA company.
Sure. So from a tech perspective, Raghav, how have you seen this grow? Of course, when we invite people into our households and urban companies in our place, Everyone's using technology. Though you don't seem to see it, it's all digital, right? We are paying digitally, we are booking digitally. The whole piece is there, the works are there. But how did this evolve in the background? I'm sure it's been tough for you guys. One city, then you went out to so many other cities. Could you tell us how this has been from a tech evolution perspective as well?
Yeah, I think best to take an example here and actually show how tech enables faster growth, right? So let's take a regular mom and pop salon shop, right? Uh, and let's look at a complex scenario. So it's COVID times. You want to be careful about the other people around you. Is the person who's working with you actually vaccinated or tested, and so on and so forth. So what will the shop require? It will require a receptionist to make sure you're scheduled well. You don't want to go and wait for 2 hours, right? It will require someone on the ground to make sure the customers are getting the right service. And the office shop is not too crowded. People are using the right protocols. So there's all these human managers floating around. Typically in the basement of the salon, there'll be a training center where there'll be 1 or 2 trainers, chutti pe after hours, before hours, you kind of do a little bit of polishing school. If you have to scale this model, it's impossible, right? But actually figuring tech out is easy. Everyone understands that kuch na kuch we can outsource and get some technology built to scale it up. The problem is in codifying, right? Each of this process could be codified. So the receptionist for us gets substituted with a matchmaking engine, because now we are able to predict when a customer wants to come to us. Hey, Roopa is a customer. We know her bookings. I know she's typically going to come on a Saturday for 4 p.m. Right? We can also predict the supply. With very high degree of accuracy. 2 days from now, who will be like? What are the 10 professionals in Roopa's colony? So if I give Roopa 4 p.m. slot, I have to be very sure that there'll be at least one person willing to pick it up, right? Tech also helps in compliance, right? So 4 p.m. ho gaya hai, deal has been signed, but now the professionals also got to show up. So we start working probably an hour before the booking to make sure the professionals left the old job, he's on his way, and if not, we can have the right interventions, right? Something which is very interesting and hidden is actually what, like in the COVID times, which we figured out. How do we make sure professionals are being safe? It is just so hard to do this in the offline world, right? But with tech, which customers actually hardly get to see, we're able to do it very simply, right? We basically leverage image recognition, image processing to figure out if it is Raghav as a professional. Then I'll make sure if Raghav is wearing a mask, right? I'll also scan Raghav's temperature every day. This was pre-vaccination time, right? So last year, the best way was to make sure someone's not kind of showing temperature. In the vaccination era, we've been able to add a lot of tech to push professionals to go out there, integrate with the COVID website, actually speed up the vaccination process. So we actually have 70% of our partners already vaccinated, which is pretty amazing. This is just in about a month and a half. These are some of the hidden things in how tech is pushing processes with a very high degree of codification and guarantee. And then you can keep innovating on top of it, right? Because it's like building an apartment. You build it layer by layer. So you don't have to care about the rest of the layers because you've codified it, you've built it. So you only have to care about the incremental stuff you're doing.
Sure. Interestingly, I picked up something when you were speaking, right? You spoke about prediction of what time I might need. So I'm sure there's a lot of data, there's a lot of predictive tools that you're using, not just for customer preferences, but also in terms of, I get these calls whenever, I use your services for maybe, which is the air purifier or the water purifier. So one knows that, when is the next cycle that comes up? Not just that, I'm sure you're using data science for other pieces as well, for the side where you're helping them come onto your platform, where you're providing them jobs. I'm sure there is a predictive tool there as well. Could you talk to us about that? Because people speak about data and, prediction. We're speaking about AI so much, but if you can give us a bit of color of how you guys have gone about.
Yeah, I think the customer side data world is very well talked about, and often people be like, "Oh, recommendation, personalization," which is true. I think that's true for every company. Right. Actually, even non-tech companies, Hindustan Levers and stuff will use a lot of data to figure out, and build right segmentation. On the partner side, for example, one of our biggest levers is training. Right now, when you're dealing with, in the next year, we have to kind of onboard probably upwards of, in the next 1 or 2 years, probably 1 lakh professionals. It's not just onboarding, you have to train them, right? If Roopa gets a bad professional, she's not going to be happy with it, right? So it's our job to get that professional back. So it starts with, how do we even know this professional is on a bad job, right? And we'll go super deep here. It's not about that salon professional done a bad job. What we are interested in knowing is the salon professional is not very good at a certain kind of waxing, or an AC partner is faltering on a certain model of AC, right? That's the depth which we need to figure out. Then we can use that information to surface very specific training material to that person, right? Systematically, and then build the right checkpoints as almost an online curriculum. And even if that fails, we have mechanisms to get them back into the training center to actually have a in-person training, which requires you to automatically schedule these 30, 40,000 partners, right, in a very streamlined process to make sure that the day they're getting scheduled, they don't get extra jobs, right? They're able to actually get retrained, go back. There's a tracking system built. I think it's some of these things on the partner side which probably people won't be aware of. There's another interesting example: products, right? Consumers are using cosmetics. They are using spare parts on a daily basis. How the magic is ever wondering, how does the partner always have the products available? It's right. The partner, if we tell the partner to go out and shop, वो एक दिन plus minus होएगा. But that means a lot. Like for a partner, maybe one job in a month doesn't matter. For a company, one job in a month is actually a lot in terms of percentage. Something like that, we'll use a lot of data because we can predict customers' behavior. This is how things are getting used. We know partners' inventory, that, hey, today he has so many sachets of a certain facial pack, right? And he's running out at this rate. And we can go out there and tell him, hey, partner, by the way, you're going to run out of this particular piece in 2 days, so you should order today. In fact, sometimes we're able to just order on his behalf in some categories if you've kind of cracked the code so well.
So interesting. So what about lending? Do you also use data to predict who might come to you for funds? Because you guys also help these guys get financed, right? So have you applied data there, technology there? How does it work? Is there like an internal Sybil tool to score these guys? I'm quite intrigued to understand how does that work.
Yeah, no, I don't think we do. We go as far as actually underwriting the lens, but we do actually partner because we have a much higher guarantee and prediction in our system than our partners. All right, so we are able to enable the ecosystem where financial institutes will participate and actually extend this because we are actually giving them a lot more, confidence. But you're absolutely right. I think as we scale out, this is one of those areas which it fascinates me as well, where we can actually evolve into doing this because we understand the partners so well, right? We're able to actually carve out. So this is a simpler example of this which we'll do. We'll help partners through financial products, but we'll help them choose and prioritize, so, hey, you want to earn this much if you want this certain goal achieved in your life.
Right.
It really helps, right? I think to some degree, this debate goes even deeper. As salaried people, which is a very factory era model, there are certain checks in place for our healthcare, for our insurance, so on and so forth. But gig economy is a very recent phenomenon, right? It basically empowers the professional or anyone who's working with freedom, but it can't just be blind freedom. So it's also our job to create the ecosystem around it in terms of well-being for them, right? Be it healthcare, be it financial freedom, financial levers to expose. And I think a lot of this, what you were kind of pointing to, goes there. I think the future is such where it totally makes sense to enable this ecosystem through some of these.
Sure. Back to Urban Company and your tweet about product market fit. There was this tweet that you had saying that, every day is a day zero and you look at product market fit very differently from other people. You don't really go after solving a problem, but you actually look at what you can do with, the market that's available and how you can solve for the market, right? Would you actually help us understand that specific quote a little better for the audiences so that,
Yeah. So I think if I remember it correctly, it was more a response on people saying, have you reached product market fit? It's a very common phrase which gets thrown around in the typical tech ecosystem these days. I think the essence of the statement is true because product market fit is basically saying that you've actually genuinely found a value which is sustainable. But the articulation of this is a little flawed, and I see this often happen where people think it's a milestone, right? There is this one point in time when you'll reach this product market fit, and then you've made it, and then you can sit back and put money, and your company is going to be like the next big billion-dollar company and so on and so forth. It's actually not true. I think company building is a continuous process. So you are actually getting product market fit every single time in the journey, and you're constantly improving your fitment. Right now, you can choose. Obviously, below a certain threshold, there is no point for you to be running that category. Right? It's just so bad. Right. So I would say that's the non-product market fit. But I don't think there is. So I think it's fair to say when you don't have product market fit because you're so bad and you have to do more work. But it's not fair to say that you have product market fit because that's totally based on a company's aspiration. And I actually subscribe to the viewpoint that if you settle for a certain point, then you're not going to keep innovating. Customers though will innovate. Not innovate, sorry. Customers demand to keep innovating, right? The famous Bezos saying, divinely discontent. Today's excitement will be tomorrow's normal. So customers will expect more. Hence, as a company, you need to constantly do more. So if you settle for, so product market fit is best established as a continuous spectrum, and you should always chase more and more value creation than thinking of just one point in time and saying product market fit ho gaya.
Right. Interesting. It's a very interesting theory. How many of them buy this theory, by the way? Because I think engineering and product have kept, people have kept this so separate that sometimes, there's a lot of conflict around understanding this concept as well. What do you think?
I think a lot of people will buy it. Problem is, a lot of times this theory gets used just for younger entrepreneurs. And I think it hides the tough journey of building a company. But in actual company building process, there are other articulations, right? Like people care a lot about the wow factor.
Yeah.
The word of mouth. I think that's a reflection of product market fit. Actually, fortunately or unfortunately, product market fit is not a linear line. It's almost like a tilted S curve. Right. So when your fitment is low, you will not see any growth. Then you'll go through a long period of it doesn't matter because product market fit hai, it's not so good. So word of mouth will be marginal. But when your product market starts to really, really reach the high, and NPS is a good quantification, right? Like if NPS was an industry standard, like high NPS, 50 plus NPS is meaning like you're really killing it in the product market fit. That's when you'll see the S curve tip up and you see the wow factor kick in. And I think marketing business articulated it as wow, but ultimately it's a product market fit articulation only. You've created so much of value that suddenly you start to see the hockey stick of wow.
Sure. In a recent LinkedIn post, for one of your other podcasts, you mentioned about 10x engineering. We'd like to hear that concept from you, if that's all right.
Oh man, this is a very hotly debated topic. There are a lot of views here, Roopa. I think this topic breaks into few sub debates. So one is the debate of 10x engineer. Is there even a 10x engineer? I think it's irrelevant. Sure, there will be. Actually, I would say there's no 10x engineer because 10x is a massive delta. So yes, you'll have good versus bad engineers. Engineers' productivity also changes per product. So for one product, I might be like a 10x person, but in the next product, I will be like the 1x person and someone else might 10x. What's relevant is as a team and as a company, are you able to create 10x impact? So the debate kind of morphs itself into not 10x engineer, but the 10x impact by engineering team. Right? And I think that frames the question well. And there starts a whole bunch of discussion on how do you 10x. And I think every leader in every company has a different journey on what's worked for them. Like for example, for us, what's worked really well. If I had to suggest to a different younger company, I would say there are two things, the two secret formulas. One is timing things well. You often don't do the right thing for the sake of going faster, right? But we forget that faster is only going to get us so far, and then there's this whole thing of technical debt which will slow us down. So it's a speed versus velocity debate, right? And I think the best teams which create the best leverage, they have a foresight. They're able to call the long-term benefits and the trade-offs, and that gives them the power to take the right call much sooner, right? As a classic example, the whole migration of monoliths to microservices, the unification of language stacks. Every company goes through it, the debate is which company does it very quickly and efficiently. That company would have started sooner, right? And the sooner is because the leadership would have had the foresight. I think that's one debate, uh, which is interesting and sometimes controversial because the whole debate of too early versus too late. And I think while too late, there are plenty of examples. I've actually never seen teams actually do things which have been too early. It's always mostly too late, right? So it should give people the confidence. It's okay to do bets early if you feel so, especially engineering teams, because they often think that engineering bets is over engineering. So we almost look at engineering as an outsourced resource pool, but it's not a cost center. It's an investment center, right? Technical debt is also part of the strategic decisions of a company, right? And the other debate is the debate of leadership's top-down calls, right? We often let engineering teams kind of be very bottom-up, which is all healthy. But oftentimes, leaders forget their role, right? The role is to take tough calls, right? One of those tough calls I've seen is in adoption. If you have if you have redundancy for everything, multiple language stacks, multiple teams doing the same thing and so on and so forth, it's okay as a strategy, but that strategy is not a 10x strategy, right? If a team is able to actually consolidate and have singularity wherever needed, they're actually able to build a lot faster leverage. You'll see this debate in number of language stacks in a company. So there will be different language stacks, but you don't want 2-3 language stacks which are serving the same purpose. Right. 5 years baad wo fatega. You see this debate in teams also, right? Do you want to have new teams for every new initiative, or is there an art in team building where you actually consolidate and build capabilities? So for us, we have teams, like our business is divided as beauty, homes, cleaning, and so on and so forth, right? But actually, our tech is not divided that way. Our tech is divided by capabilities like growth, marketplace, supply, and sub teams there, because it gives a certain expertise to a team investing in a capability, and it's not redundant, because we believe that this team will do better job at articulating the customizations in every category than actually separate teams trying to solve the same problem. So I think these are some of the nuances of the whole 10x debate, and actually the real secret in how can you create much more leveraged teams.
Sure. So internally, I think you guys have used some of these principles very well, right? In terms of making sure that there is a unanimous way of, I think there's a lot more collaboration, which is what you're suggesting for 10x engineering, right? That is one I figured from your conversation. Second, I think you very rightly mentioned, it's also about putting the best capabilities together and making sure you use to the best of each one's potential and make use of your resources in the right manner. Yeah. Though everyone wants to do that, but eventually I think we all phase out in the want to be quicker than someone else. Like you rightly said, it's not about the time, right? It's more about when do you actually make this happen? Yeah. So these in other words, high performance teams, 10x engineering, I think these are all new nomenclatures, but it's the same way of running the engineering team effectively. That's what I understand. Correct? So
it's about leverage.
Right. So Raghav, please tell us what are the new innovations that you guys have come up at Urban Company. This is for listeners who want to come and join you, irrespective of the teams they want to come and join, right? But what's going to be, if I am a youngster watching this podcast, what will excite me to come and join you guys?
Yeah. So I think important things for anyone to know about us. We are a company which values our mission above all else, right? And our mission is to empower millions of professionals. There's a theme on empowerment, and there's a theme on actually solving the problem at hand, which is this unstructured services industry, right? So can we be the global standard? Can we redefine the service industry and help every single household in the globe, right? When it comes to just running their household and living better lives. It holds true for not just the obvious business marketing team. In fact, like as an engineer, the reason why someone should be joining us is because they're in love with the mission we are trying to solve. Because how we are trying to solve it keep changing, right? And as a tech company, you're always constantly innovating and finding newer ways to solve it better.
Right.
So that's at the heart of it. What does this mean? It means that our engineering teams are not responsible to just implement. The debates which we rather have with an engineer also, and in fact, it's a requirement, right? It's not a side topic for good to have opinionated. No, it's a part of the mandate for engineering leaders. Is what is the vision for you or from you for the company? And it's not about like the new language stack. It's not about the performance. It's about how do you see the world for customers and partners change, right? And that's the conversation we try to have, and that percolates down to the last engineer, right? How are you going to build your capabilities which are going to help and empower customers and partners better, right? I think this is one large part of our company ethos, which I think, it's appetizing for a lot of folks, and it's probably not going to be fitting for a lot of folks who are looking for, just one kind of a dimension on company building, right? Quick learning experiences and stuff. I think you have schools for that. Other thing I think which we've done well, and I think this is all possible because we've done some things well. The typical functional battles of engineering, right? Like bugs or spending too much of time and dealing with technical debt and stuff. I think we save that time, and that's why engineers are able to spend time in end problem solving. It's a trade-off. I can't expect someone to solve broken problems and innovate new problems.
Correct.
Right. So what we've done is structurally been very good in our tech, and when I say tech, it means engineering, product design, and data, to actually do the right things well. In fact, it's our engineering motto. If you don't have the time to do it right, when will you have the time to do it later? So this has ensured that we've taken the right calls, and we've not created massive technical debt. So it is actually very much under control, and that gives ample time for everyone to actually go sit with the customers, sit with the partners, sit with the stakeholders, and innovate for them. Right? How we do, which is the tech, comes later.
Sure. Right.
So yeah, I think these are some of the exciting things, and this kind of materializes into problems which we are solving. So we're still on day one. We're in an industry which is not solved. So we're still trying to figure out what's the best retail experience for customers, right? What is the right selection? How do we kind of figure out better pricing constructs? How do you even structure a category, right? Like if I asked you an iPhone can be described by its color, by its size, by its RAM, what's the same for a plumber? I don't know. Plumber is supposed to fix, right? This is, I think, just a matter of time. It's our job to structure some of this. We're still trying to solve better ways of matching customers and partners. How do we make it faster? How do we make it something where we're able to further, have better predictability when it comes to, customer partner matching? How do we create a world where partners are incentivized better to do the right thing? On supply, one of our biggest challenges is how do we actually create supply? It's not just aggregation. We actually need to train so much more that we are ending towards a world where we need to literally create our own training, certification, and practical upskilling programs for our supply, which is actually very daunting. It sounds all cool, but how will you do that when you have to do it for 1 lakh professionals every year, right? And that's a really, really tough challenge. You're not talking about theory. You're talking about real practical training of professionals and incentive structures and stuff. Sure. So I think some of these are the big rooted problems which is solving. And I think it's I'm hoping it will be always, but it's definitely day one right now, because the problems you're solving are very, very early in the industry, which makes it very exciting.
I have one more question revolving around, what hit us in 2020, and we still have the after effects in 2021. So the first wave, of course, taught us all a lot, right, on how to sustain ourselves with being at home, doing this offline. But what about your staff who's actually on the street, going to people's homes? For the second wave, how did you cope with it, during the lockdown? Could you talk about that?
I think last year taught us a lot. Last year was a precaution year. Compared to the second wave, the first wave was just so small. And I think all of us took precautions much before the real damage started to happen. Second wave, I don't think we did a very good job as a country, as whatever, like individuals, as government, everyone kind of faltered. And I think the thing was, first wave taught us how to run in lockdowns. It taught us mechanisms. We were able to build tech. We were able to actually get ourselves as employees, our partners, accustomed to the protocols to follow. So some of those kind of came easier, right? For example, how do we make sure we are able to be in line with containment zones, right? How are we able to navigate that? And we used to do geofencing very actively. I think maybe something which needs to be said is, we are as an ecosystem responsible not just for serving our customers, but in times of lockdowns, the priorities change, right? We have to protect and empower ourselves, and it's not employees for us only.
Correct.
That's obviously important, but it's our partners.
Right.
Our partners can't go without earning for a long time.
Yeah.
They're living by the week or living by the month. So it's very important that we as an ecosystem try to fight the balance. It's very easy to come in and say, सब कुछ बंद कर देते 2 साल के लिए, right? But it matters not just of life, it's also of livelihoods.
Correct.
Right? And that balancing act is what we've been trying to really do and structure well. So last year taught us how to deal with the constructs of lockdowns, which was good. And some of those we extended, right? Like we were able to actually dissipate loans to our partners where categories were down for one month because they had to be, and it's a good thing. For livelihoods, we still had to kind of dissipate interest-free loans, pay us back when things happen so that those families still go through. This year, we were able to kind of innovate a lot more, right? Mm-hmm. If safety is going to be the new norm, and it has to be the new norm, with vaccinations, our biggest priority was, hey, if these partners need to actually earn and they need to be in serving customers, we need to make sure, they are actually leading the way in terms of safety standards.
Correct.
And that's where the push for vaccinations came from. Health checkups, PPE are all last year innovations which have continued. So, saal ka credit hai. But vaccination, I think, is going to be the new normal. Like I would personally not meet any friend or family member who actually does not have antibodies in him. Right? But it's not cool anymore. So I think give or take another quarter, and I think we should be in a much better state as a country. But with our partner fleets and our employees, they're really pushing the pedal. And I think by the end of June, more or less, everyone 80% plus, we want to get vaccinated because this is going to be the new certificate to operate, I think, socially.
Right. I think this is very exciting, right? Both for someone who wants to create an impact for like a make in India kind of an approach, because you guys are creating so many livelihoods for people. Second, I love the theory of how you're looking at engineering and product and everything working so closely together. Yeah. Even right from the beginning, Raghav, if you remember our conversations, you guys have always thought of it as one specific thing to solve. I love the idea of how you've gone into depth of each of these categories, right? Without making it like categories per engineering or data or any of your teams, but you made sure that you were able to replicate. For all those audiences who are listening to this podcast, I would really encourage for them to go and join your team because I think there's a lot of freedom. That's what I hear from whatever you're saying. There's a lot of saying of ownership. You allow people a lot of autonomy. I can hear that out and loud when you're speaking for the team. Second piece is I think there's a lot more to do. That's what I understand from your conversation. I'm sure you guys are thinking of going global. It's not just India. There's going to be a new set of challenges. So for all those people who want to come and join your team, there would be a lot more things that they can look forward to. So please apply to urban companies, what I'd like to say on this podcast. I think it'd be lovely to work with Raghav and his team.
Thank you, Roopa, for hosting this. Yes, rightly said. It's always day one for us, tons of problem. And it's been a pleasure being here, having this chat with you. It's always good to go deeper into, what makes tech companies tech, right? And I think we've been able to discuss through some of those nuances, which I think is very important for everyone, not just engineers, but even outside. You have to talk the tech lingo to actually build successful tech companies as well. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Raghav, for being on the show. It was lovely chatting with you. And I'm sure that loads of people will have questions. We'll have your Twitter and your LinkedIn handles on the podcast for them to reach out to you.